How's it going, y'all? It's the Sentinel again, and I've been joined with a very good friend of mine, Mrs. Cai
Hi.
Wee, and we're just gonna be talking about, well, death.
Death indeed.
Yes, indubitably. So please go ahead, share
I mean,
us.
like, I guess, like, I can just start off with, like, asking you a question.
Okay.
Um, I mean, you're in your 20s right now. I'm in my 20s. Have you even thought about what you wanted to do with your body whenever you die?
Well, that's always been a very, very scary subject for me. I haven't really thought about it yet. I'm not scared of it anymore, of course. I've gotten my fears of death. I mean, I'll be dead afterwards. So the whole organ donating stuff, I might be down for it. When I was younger, I was always told to no, don't sign up for body donor because they'll kill you off early when you're in a life or death situation. Who knows? Maybe your liver or your blood can, or whatever organ, it could possibly save a whole entire group of people as opposed to me being the only one to survive this. But anyway, I'm just overthinking this. I I haven't decided yet, but when the time comes, it'll come hopefully before I'm dead.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's a good thing to think about. The thing is, like, I know with our generation, I'm saying, like, 90s and 2000s kids, millennials, and things like that. I feel like there's this really big stigma that death is, like, taboo to talk about. So the more you talk about it, the quicker it'll come, kind of thing. But I think it's really important to realize that death is really the only for sure thing that anybody gets in life. And so I think it's really important to actually start thinking about it. And I think that's really the first step towards, being okay with it. And I think something that's really interesting is that part of this, like, fear of death or like the taboo around, like, talking about death, a lot of it is actually fairly recent. Like, if you go back in time, at least in America, about 100 years ago or so, or let's say 150, 200 years ago, the funeral industry wasn't all that big. Like, somebody died in your family, then it would be the family that would take care of it. And it wasn't like an arguable thing. It was just something that you did, you know? Let's say your grandmother dies and, you and your parents and cousins and aunts and uncles, any children or any other blood relatives of that person who died it was just kind of expected. You would wash the body, you would dress the body, and then when the time came, I'm not exactly sure about cremation, but I know that if there was a place for burial, then the family would be the one to carry that out and sort of be the one to dig the hole and to be the people who would close it up and things like that. But if you look at it today, I feel like there's just this whole stigma about even looking at a corpse or thinking about death. And so when the time comes nowadays for a lot of family members who do pass away, there's only a very small percentage of people who actually really want to be involved in that process. You know what I'm saying? And um, so yeah, I just think that it's really interesting that something like that, you know, circa 200 years ago was just something, the reality that we're living in today was just something that was unfathomable just a couple hundred years ago. Like, how dare you put your family's well-being into the hands of somebody else? Like, that's your responsibility, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, and that's just like, it's more just like the tip of it. Um, and a lot of the funeral industry, at least from what I've learned, like, I sensationalize, not sensationalize, but like Caitlin Doty is the goat. And if you don't know who Caitlin Doty is, she's actually got a YouTube channel herself, and I've been following her for the last few years. But She has a channel called Ask a Mortician. All of you should go check her out. And she has books written about the funeral industry. I've read them both. I also pre-ordered her new book, and it's coming in signed, and I'm so excited. But she basically talks about a lot of what goes on. Like, she talks about how they sew the mouth of a dead body, because whenever you're dead, your mouth doesn't stay shut, and your eyes don't stay shut either. So I think that's something that a lot of people really don't know. And I know when those videos came out, my mind was just like blown, like, oh my god. And it's so invasive, or it felt invasive, like what they do to actually, like, close the mouth. So do you know how they close the mouth of a dead body?
I have no idea.
So basically, they will use like a long rounded needle, or like a curved needle. Yeah, and then there's like 2 methods to do it. So you can use a curved needle and basically just like suture it up. So going from, I think it's like under the chin, and then taking the needle and then going through the nostril, something like that. She explains a lot of this in her video, but that's how they sew the mouth shut, to keep it closed during like an open, like a body viewing during a funeral. But the family doesn't know stuff like this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And the other way is basically to just staple the gums together and staple them and like twist tie them together, which also seems kind of invasive, but I mean, it's just what they have to do to basically give. I mean, like, there are a lot of different opinions about this. I feel like it gives a very false impression of what death is really like. So I know that, like, whenever we see a family member that is dead, that is at a viewing, a lot of times they are made up, like their body is worked on. They have a whole bunch of makeup on because the skin is discolored and bruised and seeping, and their face doesn't sit in the right position anymore because they have no control over it. But I think what's really interesting is that the family doesn't usually, not exactly the family, but people don't really want to face that reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is like a lot of people don't really want to face the fact that death really is the only final, like, for sure thing that will happen to you. And seeing a body in a very jaundiced and bruised and just like what to us seems very unnatural, but it's actually probably one of the most natural things in the world, in that kind of state, it's really scary. And the thing is that fear is making a lot of the funeral industry tons of money. And so they really build on that fear. I'm not saying that like funeral homes are the devil or anything like that, because they really are there to help you. But a lot of times I feel like families, or just like people in general, will just pay more to sort of, I guess, avoid the reality of death. And I don't really think that's right. So yeah, I mean, like, if you saw, like, I don't know, a close family member pass away, but you also saw their body 24 hours later, where their bodies will most likely be jaundiced, so their skin would be like yellow, their mouth would hang open, and their eyes would be kind of like half shut. I mean, like, what would you feel? So
yeah, maybe. Are you asking how I feel in particular?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen enough dead body, and I luckily have not been around a close family member who's died yet. I used to fear dead bodies in general, but my aunt told me there's no need to fear. It's just a body. The person is gone, the suffering's gone. So if anything, it's a natural process. They can't hurt you. Yeah, it's a little freaky to see that this once living person is gone, but there's not much you could do. That's just me.
Yeah, that's true.
I haven't been around enough close loved ones who died yet, so.
I see. I mean, like, I don't really think I haven't either, personally. But I guess just like knowing that all of this stuff kind of goes on behind the scenes is, I don't know, I guess it's just really eye-opening. I remember there was, I read Caitlin Doty's book called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. It's basically just a memoir of what she experienced working as a crematory operator. So she would basically prepare the bodies and stuff for cremation. And there was I think there was like a little girl who was like 8 years old who died in the hospital, and her parents didn't even show up at the funeral home. They basically booked the appointment to get her body cremated online, and then they just wanted her ashes mailed to them.
Wowzers.
And I think, like, you know, when we say it like that, it sounds really barbaric, but it's basically what happens a lot of the that holistic avoidance of death. But I think that in reality, if a lot more people just sort of got involved in the process of death, whether that be like even if your family member is like in hospice or severely ill or like on their deathbed, being involved is something I don't really imagine anything else that could give a person more closure. And that's really just my opinion. Obviously, I can't really vouch for anybody else on that matter, but you know, I really think that getting involved in one way or another to know that like you did their part or that you did your part is kind of something that, I don't know, there's a beauty to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. From the preparation process to the final burial, indeed. How would I say this? It's nice to celebrate the life of someone by sending them off in a way that is a little sad. It's all a matter of how the ceremony is put off too. Where I'm going with this is I'm saying that I know a lot of Black Americans, their funerals are I'm not gonna say all, but the ones that I've been to, they're all fun. They're all happy because they're not mourning on the death of a loved one, but rather celebrating the life of this man or woman. And that ceremony to me was pretty sacred. Everyone was happy. Sad, but happy. The message of celebrating one's life is quite a different one from what I'm used to. Cambodians, for example, their funerals are extremely, extremely depressing. Everyone's crying. I swear there are plenty of old ladies who like are being held back by other people, and they're just pretty much screaming to go in, to jump in the coffin. And I just think it's the funniest thing ever, but it's not funny.
I mean, like, it's not funny, but I think it's a really good thing to show, like, that type of involvement, you know what I mean?
Right, indeed. Any sort of involvement.
Yeah. I think I haven't been to very many funerals, fortunately, in my lifetime, but from what I've seen, a lot of them are very routine. So, especially if you ask for an open casket, where you can actually view the body, there's an option where you don't have to do that. You could just bury the body straight away. But if you have an open casket, from what I've seen in media or how it's portrayed in media, it is very routine, where a lot of people just like walk up and sort of just look at the body for a moment or two, maybe touch its face or hands, things like that, and then move on. And I mean, that process to me just doesn't seem very involved, you know? And the thing is, what a lot of people don't know is that you can be involved in the body preparation process. There are things that you can do behind the scenes that a lot of people don't really know about. And it's this sort of like behind the scenes preparation that a lot of funeral homes, from what I know, from what I've researched at least, that's part of what they make money off of, is that sort of fear and that denial that the person's death is final. Like, because getting involved in the process is very intimate, and it's very, it's very gut-wrenching and emotional, but at the same time, no one really knows the family member like the family. So it would only, I feel like it just, logistically, it makes more sense for the family to just be involved in that kind of process. The family and loved ones. But we don't really think about that because it's just sort of engraved in American culture at least, to sort of be very distant from the process. And I don't know, it just doesn't, I guess learning about all of this just kind of doesn't sit right with me. And then a question for you is, how do you feel about the environmental impact of funerals? Have you ever thought
I
about
have not, actually. Are you talking about
So,
cremation, pollution?
not
Okay.
even that. I'm talking about embalming
Oh, okay.
and burial. So, I feel like a lot of people don't know, but bodies are actually buried inside of a burial vault. So you got like the body in the coffin, right? Or the casket. In America, it's a casket. But a lot of times what happens is that underground, there's this giant concrete vault that takes up a huge amount of space, and it's meant to be like the foundation for the casket to go into, so that way it doesn't shift, and that way it doesn't shift the top ground, so it kind of keeps the cemetery level. So, but a lot of people don't really know about that, and I think that's also why burials have to put in these concrete like foundation vaults underground. And on top of that, whenever a body is buried, most of the time it's embalmed before it's buried. And embalming fluid is actually a carcinogen. So that's also another thing that was more built upon like preserving the body, of course. I remember watching Caitlin Doty's videos, and she said that embalming fluid was originally made, I think during the Civil War, or it was more widely used during the Civil War to preserve bodies so that way they could be identified. And it more became something, I feel personally. I mean, I know that there's a lot more uses for embalming, and it is an art, and a lot of morticians will put, a lot of pride in their art, and I respect that. I personally feel if it was used on me, on my body, to, I guess, hide the reality of death. Because at the end of the day, the body is still going to decompose as it would normally. It would just take slightly longer than it would have. But all of that embalming fluid has to go somewhere. And when you're buried underground, usually it'll just end up seeping through to groundwater and in the soil, which is no bueno, because groundwater is kind of important. and being an embalmer is also really dangerous as well, because they're around the carcinogen so much. But a lot of it is just to preserve a body that will eventually decompose. So I feel like if people were more involved in that process and just like helping with those kinds of services, I feel like there would be less and less need for embalming and more of a need for a natural burial, where there aren't any chemicals involved, there aren't any like large caskets involved, where the body just goes straight in the earth and sort of gives back to what the earth gave to it. With embalming and traditional burial, it's really hard to do that since you're being buried in a synthetic box or a wood box that takes a while to decompose, and then in a concrete vault. I guess to me it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We are, after all, products of the universe, so it would only make sense to naturally go back into the soil. I didn't know that the embalming thing. I mean, I know very little about the funeral process itself in general. Didn't know about the, what was it, the concrete box? Yeah.
Oh yeah, like it's
Yeah,
concrete.
I looked it up, and it does defeat the purpose of returning your body back to the earth. Yeah, I know very little about this subject because all I knew about was cremation. Southeast Asian Buddhists were all told to be cremated, but well.
And then I know in Southeast Asia, at least I know in Thailand, public cremation is still a thing where, at least when I was little, I saw a whole bunch of public cremations where the body would be basically placed in a wooden box and then there'd be embers underneath it and it would be like cremated, like in public.
Wow.
But in a way, it was more for the family. That was also their way of getting like the community and the family involved as well. Like, I understand the need for privacy, but at the same time, I think for some people, that type of public, like publicity, is a way to sort of give closure to the community. And I think that's something that we don't really think about, at least in America. So I'm not exactly a seasoned funeral industry veteran. A lot of what I get is from reading, and of course there's a wide variety of sources that I haven't read. But I think that at least for the younger generation, or any generation really, it's important to think about death and to have a death plan, because a lot of times there are a lot of people who don't have that type of death plan, not even a will, but just sort of instructions talking about, like, you know, what exactly do I want with my body when I die? I know Caitlin Doty talks about this as like exercise. So if you go to the gym and you work out like one day, then you're probably not going to see any results when it comes to that. And the same thing is talking about death. It has to be something that is consistently talked about in order to really be okay with it, you know, because finality is something that humans don't exactly understand, because for us we're sort of biologically programmed to understand that there will be a tomorrow, there will be another hour, there will be another minute, but in reality we don't really know that for certain. But having that death plan and really communicating with people as to like what you want when you die. Like, I remember when I actually started following Caitlin Doty, I sort of thought about it and I asked my mom and I was like, do you know what you want, like, when you die? And she has it all figured out. Like, she wants to donate her body to science, which I thought was really cool. She has it in her will. She's got a death plan just like all figured out. But I don't really know anybody else who does. She's really the uncommon. She's really the exception when it comes to the people that I know, at least. And, you know, maybe a lot of people will think, you know, I'm just in my early 20s, so I might be too young to think about death. But I think that it's something that everybody should really think about, because it will come eventually. So, and I think that it's also, going back to the topic of exercise, it's also good to really explore different options. So just like with exercise, you use different techniques or different workout routines to see what fits with you, and same goes with death. And I think that, you know, I personally feel that our generation has a lot of potential to really change the views about death and to really change the stigma behind it, the taboo. because it really shouldn't be taboo. It's something. It's the most natural thing in the world. Perhaps the methods of death don't have to be natural, but death itself is natural, and it really should be something that's explored and talked about and accepted. So, and I know that I talk about Caitlin Doty a lot because she really opened my eyes onto the subject, and she said in one of her videos, I remember, she said, "You've had a good life, you focused on having a good life, so why not focus on having a good death as well? Something that's exactly what you want, and something that your family can really help you follow through and make sure that you know it's what you want." And I think that also goes for, like, you know, somebody close to you. So it's really, if you want to do, you know, your loved ones justice, you know, figure out what they want with their bodies. Because even though I talk about like how embalming is terrible for the environment and things like that, it's an option. And everybody has the freedom to make that choice if it's really what they want. So, but yeah, I just don't think that there should be like this fear of this anymore. We have a really big platform to really spread knowledge about something like this and to really turn around the stigma. And I think our generation, the younger generation, can really use that and just move it forward. So
That was very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for opening up this door for us. I know a lot of people aren't too familiar with the death process itself.
Honestly, like I said, I'm really just a bystander of the whole process. I'm not in the funeral industry. I don't have that kind of knowledge. But I think that, you know, there are a lot of great mortician channels on YouTube that talk about the process of death and different things to know about it, especially when it comes to funeral services, and options that you can take, like things that you can investigate to see if it's what you really want. So we should probably go be thanking them rather than thanking me. I'm just a messenger.
You're a messenger who educated, and as an educator, you must spread forth knowledge.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, like, I've sat here talking basically the entire time. Do you have any thoughts or anything?
God, I'm following along, and I'm learning
about it
as I go on too. In terms of death, to answer your question from the beginning, I completely answered something different, but cremation would be the way to go for me. And I might consider science. We'll see.
There's actually a new method that's being, you know, pushed forth right now called aquamation, and that's something that I personally would really like to see in the future. Basically, aquamation is called water cremation, is like the other term for it. And I don't know the specifics of it, but it leaves a lot less of a carbon footprint. Basically, they put the body in a chamber and dissolve it in lye, I believe. But then, you know, all inorganic material, so like your bones and things like that, will come out and are ground up into ashes, just like in a cremation. But there's so much less of a carbon footprint when it comes to that. At the moment, it's not approved for human use, which is kind of interesting because if the body is dead, then, you know, we should have a choice as to what we want to do with it. But at the moment, it's not legal for human use. I believe in California, it's used for, you can use it for pets. Some funeral homes will use it for pets. But, I mean, it's like having a good death. If you're going to die, you might as well give back as much as you can.
Absolutely. I found a really good picture that explains the difference between burying, cremation, and aquamation, and the benefits of, well, really only the benefits of aquamation. The rest are Uh, it pollutes. It pollutes, except for aquamation. I didn't know about that. I mean, when a body's dead,
yeah. Mhm.
it's no longer a person. So that's interesting that it's not
Mhm.
quote unquote legal for humans that are dead. Your body when you're dead, you're no longer human. Just my personal take on it.
And I mean, I understand that it's probably not for everyone. I think the main argument right now is that to a lot of people it seems kind of barbaric. Like, oh, you're just going to be draining, like you're just gonna drain grandma like down the drain, which is kind of
My grandma's
barbaric.
dead.
But we've had we've had the same outlook on cremation not too long ago, and cremation is more widely accepted than aquamation is now. So, and especially when a body's embalmed, all of the fluids in the body are basically tossed down the drain. So it's kind of the same thing, just leaves less of a carbon footprint and is better for the environment, and the family gets to take the ashes home. So, I mean, overall, I just personally think it's a lot better.
Yeah, if it
So,
doesn't leave a carbon footprint, I'm much more open to that.
mhm. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I have to say on this subject. I mean, Caitlin Doty is a great educator when it comes to the death industry, so highly recommend checking out her videos and also her books because she's a great writer. And yeah, so.
Well, okay. So, looks like our little podcast comes to an end about death. Kylie, thanks again.
Hey.
Kylie's cool, very awesome, great speaker. She's she's an actual teacher too, so
Hey.
awesome. Thank you for joining us.
You're awesome.
You're embarrassing me. Alright, this concludes it for our 32-minute podcast. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.